Doctors, when did you realize your hospital was hiding something dark? Mrs. Irwin grabbed my arm, complaining about a horrible smell in her room for 3 days straight. Dr. Fowler, please. The smell is getting worse. It's like something died in here. I patted her hand gently and assured her maintenance had checked the vents twice already. Mrs. Irwin had mild dementia, and the nurses had already moved her to a different room once, but she insisted the smell followed her. Over the next few days, her complaints intensified. She refused to eat, saying the smell made her nauseous. She barely slept and kept asking to be moved. The nursing staff was getting frustrated because we had limited beds and couldn't keep accommodating what seemed like paranoid delusions. On day 5, Mrs. Irwin became more agitated. She started refusing to stay in her room at all and would wheel herself to the nurses' station. Other patients began complaining that she was disrupting their rest with her frequent outbursts. "There's something under my bed," she insisted when I tried to coax her back to her room. I actually got down on my hands and knees to look under her bed just to calm her down. There was nothing but dust bunnies and a forgotten pen. I helped her back into bed and increased her anxiety medication. The next morning, Mrs. Irwin's daughter arrived for a visit and immediately complained about an odor. This caught my attention because visitors usually noticed hospital smells more than staff. I called maintenance again and they promised to do a deep clean of the room, but Mrs. Irwin refused to wait. She packed her belongings into a plastic bag and announced she was leaving against medical advice. She kept saying something terrible had happened in that room and she could feel it. "Mom, you need to finish your recovery here. Your surgery site could get infected. I'd rather die at home than spend another night with that smell." Security was called when Mrs. Irwin tried to leave through the emergency exit. It became a whole scene with her screaming about dead bodies while other patients and visitors watched in alarm. We had to sedate her, which made me feel terrible, but she was becoming a danger to herself. That evening, I decided to spend some time in room 304 myself. Maybe if I sat there long enough, I'd notice whatever was bothering Mrs. Irwin. I did paperwork in her room for an hour, but detected nothing unusual. The same antiseptic hospital smell we all knew. 3 days later, Mrs. Irwin's daughter called to say her mother had passed away at home. She'd never recovered from the trauma of her hospital stay and kept talking about the smell until the end. I felt guilty wondering if we'd missed something medical that could have saved her. Room 304 stayed empty for a week, which was unusual given our typical capacity. Nurses whispered that it felt wrong somehow. Even rational medical professionals can develop superstitions, and Mrs. Irwin's behavior had unsettled everyone. Eventually, a new patient was assigned to the room, but he requested a transfer after one night. "There's a weird smell," he said, like something crawled into the walls and died. This time I took it seriously. I called maintenance and insisted on a thorough investigation. They checked everything from the HVAC system to the plumbing. They even brought in a specialized team to look for mold or dead animals in the walls. Nothing turned up, but the smell complaints continued. 2 weeks after Mrs. Irwin's death, a water pipe burst in the room below 304. Maintenance had to remove several floor tiles to access the damaged pipe. That's when they called the police. Under the tiles directly beneath where Mrs. Irwin's bed had been, they found a sealed plastic bag. Inside was a human hand. The police sealed off the entire ward as a crime scene. They brought in forensic teams. The hand had been deliberately placed there and sealed to slow decomposition, but not enough to prevent the smell from seeping through. Investigators questioned all the staff about who had access to that room. They pulled employment records going back years. The hand was sent for DNA testing. The hospital administrators were in full damage control mode, worried about lawsuits and publicity. I couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Irwin. She'd been right all along and we'd dismissed her as delusional. The guilt was overwhelming, especially when her daughter called asking if her mother's death was connected to what they'd found. The DNA results came back, but raised more questions than answers. The hand belonged to a nurse who'd worked on our floor 5 years ago. The problem was, she was very much alive and still had both hands. She'd moved to another state and was shocked when police contacted her. Someone had used tissue samples to create a convincing fake. Who would do something like this? Nurse Maya asked during our staff meeting. The detective leading the investigation had a theory, but needed more evidence. He mentioned that Mrs. Irwin had been a nurse herself 40 years ago at this very hospital. She'd worked this exact floor when it was the psychiatric ward. The placement might not have been random at all. "We're looking into cold cases from her time here," the detective said. "Someone wanted her specifically to find this. The question is why." Full story on channel linked below.